there's a dad. In fact, you saw his picture. He's a pain in the neck. He's a nice guy. He's got a great heart, but he's a pain in the neck because he thinks everybody needs his opinion because he's right about everything. And he comes to our lunchtime and he dominates with all of his stories that we've all heard. But he's a good guy. Well, he's got a son. His son and he are just alike, so they don't get along at all. Somehow, the son got my cell phone number. So now I haven't heard from my friend much recently, but I hear from his son to complain about his dad. And we've gone through all this for a couple of years now, and there's been, again, a lot of that pastoral counseling kind of stuff. And our phone call in June, I think it was, he called and we got to talk and he said, well, you know, I've committed my life to Jesus. He's a truck driver and he listens to radio preachers. And he told me who he was listening to. So I said, okay, those guys are legit. And he said, I've committed my life to Jesus. He said, but I don't have an opportunity to get baptized. And I said, well, that's no problem. I called my pastor and he said, sure, bring him on down. So on a Saturday, which is when this guy could make it, we did a baptismal service with Becky and I and his girlfriend and the guy and our pastor. And we had a great time together. Now, it was interesting because the father wasn't there. I tried to get him to come. He wouldn't come. But it gave me great opportunity to say, now, Dad, let's talk. Again, those relationships, those opportunities to present Jesus in unique ways. We're going to talk more and more about that in just a minute. Now, why did we leave pastoral ministry? Why did we leave that kind of stuff? Network ministry, denominational ministry, that's an easy description. It drives you crazy and you want to hit your head in the hammer, self in the head with a hammer every once in a while because it just makes you so crazy. But pastoring was great. Why did we do this? Well, it's because there was events that I can't describe. I don't have enough time. I could describe them, but not enough time. But it came down to this. Jesus said in Luke chapter 19, verse 10, for the Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost. And I was aware because at that time I was pastoring in Los Angeles and I couldn't physically see Dodger Stadium, but we were near LA Airport and Dodger Stadium is catty-cornered across the LA basin from there. And so figuratively, I was looking that direction out of my office window. And there's 15 million people there. 10 million have never had the message of Jesus in that where I was looking. And Jesus said, what are you going to do about it? That moment, the pastoral call left my heart. And we started doing this kind of stuff, but it took a while journeying through that network ministries to learn some of the stuff that I needed to learn. That's why we did it, because suddenly it dawned on me, I've given my whole life to taking care of Christians. Please don't be offended about what I'm going to say, that should be able to take care of themselves by this time. Because just like most churches, the two churches I pastored for all those years was full of mature Christians. Oh, we had new converts, but full of mature Christians. And suddenly it was like, well, Jesus said his only job was to seek and save the lost. He didn't say my job is to heal people. He didn't say my job is to take care of situations. He does that, but he came to seek and save the lost. So you're in trouble. I'm only on page 1, and there's 16 pages to this outline. I hope you brought your lunch. Good night. Now, I'm sure that everyone in this room would like to join Jesus in his ministry of reaching the lost. I'm sure no one would say, no, I don't want to do that. You might be afraid to do it, and there's a lot of reasons why we're afraid. But you would all want to join it. So let me start with giving you some numbers. You woke up this morning and said, I need a good dose of statistics in my life today, didn't you? I just know you did. I can feel it in my heart. Well, let me tell you first about my friend, and I'll use his real name, Jay. Jay didn't know Jesus. He's now gone from this life, and it grieves my heart every time I bring him up because I know he died not knowing Jesus. But he was a good example, and he always thought it was cool that a pagan like him, I was using his story every time I went out and did these messages. He thought that was just so cool. He said, yeah, tell him about me. So I will. Jay had at least 5 generations. See, when I say people are unchurched out there, we all think of Chinese immigrants or something, right? Jay was at least 5th generation in the United States. He's just as normal, middle-class American as you and I. His grandparents had never been in church. His parents had never been in church. He was in church long enough to get married. His kids were never in church. His grandkids have never been in church. Now, there are about 60% of our community that's just like Jay. Never been in church, don't have a church background, don't have a clue why you got up to come here this morning on a cold, not quite winter, but still feels like winter morning. Why in the world would you do that? It's so cold. I don't understand what's going on here. They don't have a clue. Now, about 20% of people out there used to go to church. And when we have outreaches and stuff, if we reach anyone, that's generally who we reach because they already understand the dynamic. But 60% of the church, of the community don't know anything about church. So you can look at it this way. When you go to Burger King, there's a Burger King, right? Well, if you go to Burger King and there's 10 people in that dining room today after church, and there's 2 of you, that means there's probably 2 people that used to go to church and don't anymore, and the other 6 people have never had the message of Jesus. Now that's the reality. We don't want to accept it because we think, well, they all saw Billy Graham in a bar and got saved. No, they didn't. The percentages on that are very, very, very low. So with the 4,900-ish people here in Baldwin City, about 2,900 of them are unchurched. Think about that for a minute. There's your mission field, 2,900 people. So you go down to the high school, you go wherever, in a crowd of 100, there's probably 20 that go to church, 20 that used to, but 60 of them have never been in church. You go to the football game. Football season's over now, right, for high school. So you go to the basketball game. And there's 100 people there. Remember the numbers. Of those 100 people there, 60 of them don't know the message of Jesus. That is the reality of life in the United States today. And those numbers have stayed for decades now. And those have been studied by religious survey people, by secular survey people, and they always come up with the same numbers. Now, so if you think about it, we say, well, Douglas County has 71,000 people or just over. That means, I did my mathematics wrong. About 42,000 of them have never been in church. So when you go to the gas station and there's somebody right over there getting gas like you are, they don't know Jesus. They've never even really heard of Jesus. Oh, they know his name and they use it a lot in different various ways, different from you. But they don't know Jesus. Now, about 1990, Becky and I were pastoring a little desert church out by Edwards Air Force Base. Have you ever heard of Edwards Air Force Base, where the space shuttle used to land? We could see it. In fact, it could come over and we could see up in the wheels were already down. We could see up inside as it went over. We had a missionary come, a missionary and his wife, and I said, as the pastor, I said, well, Sister so-and-so, would you like to greet the congregation? We used to say that back in those days, and called each other brother and sister too. Sister so-and-so, would you like to stand up? Sister Huffy was her name. She stood up and she said, when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no less days to sing God praise than when we first begun, the lost will have been in hell for 10,000 years. And with no less days for torment. And she went on, and that devastated me. That devastated me, but that's the reality. That guy in the other side of the classroom, of your job, whatever, that person is not just merely inconvenienced. They're not merely missing the blessings that you and I experience. They are, and will be, unless we do something about it, irrevocably, eternally condemned to an eternity in hell unless we build a bridge from our lives to theirs that Jesus can cross over. I hate to be that in your face. I've had district leadership tell me, Steve, don't ever talk about hell. Nobody wants to hear about it. well, then what are we doing here? If I'm not trying to reach people that are hell-bound, then what in the world am I doing here? We can just go watch football on TV. Are they still playing football? Yeah, okay. You can tell I don't care anything about football. LA Dodgers, that's a whole other story, but I digress. Now, there are some simple rules for reaching unlost people, unchurched people that I found to be true across the board. Number one, we're not effective when we quote the Bible or tell them about hell, because they don't believe in the Bible. And I have my master's degree in history. So it doesn't take me long when they say, oh, the Bible was written by 100 people over 10,000 years. I can eat their lunch on that. That's not accurate. None of that's accurate. The Bible is the most well-documented book in all of man's history by orders of magnitude. If you don't understand that, go to my website, highwaychapel.com, and look for Garage Thoughts, and you'll see one about the Bible, and I'll lay it all out for you. Something I learned at Cal State Long Beach from an agnostic professor in my Roman history class. The Bible, this is accurate, this is dependable. But they don't know that, and you don't want to get into an argument about them. You just build your life on it and then let that bridge be built so that they will too. The 60% will not come to your Christmas programs. When I was pastoring in Los Angeles, we had professional level entertainment people and things like that. We had a vibrant children's ministry. We would put on amazing Christmas programs. Over the course of the 12 years I was there, do you have any idea how many parents of those kids that came to kids' church actually came for our Christmas program? Less than 5 in 12 years. Because people that will let their kids come to church without them following along don't care enough about their kids to check it out. And they don't want to be involved. So the Christmas programs, we used to do outreaches on Halloween, and we had a band that was a pretty hot band. In fact, they were filming a movie next door, and the movie crew, the secular theatrical movie people, they came over to listen to the band. We were a good band. And so we had that. We had hundreds of people, and we did the trunk or treat thing and gave out tons of candy and all that stuff. You know how many people came to church as a result of that? We did that for, 5 or 6, 7 years, something like that. We did carnivals. We did everything, trying to do the typical outreachy kind of stuff. And of course, we did the food giveaways and stuff, but that doesn't really work in middle class and above neighborhoods, and we were in a higher middle class neighborhood, so food giveaways don't work there because they don't perceive that need. So the hard truth is that you should do outreach, but it only works when you see that as an opportunity to build relationship. An example, a friend of mine who's now got Alzheimer's, and it's breaking my heart because he's not even 60 yet, but he pastored a church in Ventura. Oh, pretty place. Church is great. They did a car show. They outgrew the parking lot, and the parking lot held like 200 cars. They got too many cars coming. So the next year and years after that, they were at the Sears parking lot at the mall, overlooking the ocean. Amazing. The church was growing. Part of it was because of the car show. Well, I started helping him with doing judging and stuff, and I had my clipboard and I was judging a car, acting like I was judging, but I was listening to these two young ladies behind me. See, he trained his people well, because one young lady had a couple of kids in a stroller, the other kid, and then a little toddler running around. Her kids weren't there, but she had kids, and she was the one from the church. And she said, so what do you do for playtime for your kids? Oh, this church has some great stuff for kids. This and this and this. Hey, why don't we do this? Give me a call. Here's my number. Give me a call. We'll do a play date. We'll get our kids together at such and such a park, and we'll have a good time. Oh, that'd be great. See, that's what outreaches are for, is us connecting with them so the bridges can start being built. Hey, that kid's perfect in my sight because he knew a Bible when he saw one. Don't correct my friend. And it takes a lot longer than You'd think, my good friend, he now moved to Wisconsin. He lives in Wisconsin, where they've had snow for over a month now. Not me. But we started doing an outreach in the community in which he lives, in their little city hall. We were doing an Alpha program. If you don't know what Alpha is, don't worry about it. And it didn't work because COVID hit like the second week we were meeting. So he said, hey, I still want to study the Bible. Now, this guy's never been in church in his life. I still want to study the Bible. I said, well, let's go. We worked it out. Tuesday nights, I'd come over. I gave him one of those books that you saw on the screen. Unless it was on that screen, then you saw it over there. And the Bible study stuff. Right away, he said, I don't want to do that. About the third time we met, I don't want to do that. He said, I want to read the Bible on my own, and I'll have questions when you come over, and we'll talk about the questions. I said, okay. You know what book he started on? Revelation. Oh, heavens, I said, please don't do that. He goes, no, that's what I want to. He went through Revelation and then Genesis. He got saved. He got saved as a result of that goofy, unorthodox, weird kind of Bible study. But do you have any idea how many times I had to go over there? Almost every week for a couple of years, and he didn't actually do a formal confession of faith and baptism until he moved to Wisconsin. Then he had to call me that very day and say, hey, Steve, guess where I am? I'm in church. Guess what I just did? So it takes a while, but if you're just faithful to them and let the Spirit build those bridges and you use the things that you know and you have in common, God will move and He will change their lives. Now, people do studies of everything. I mean everything. But somebody did a study of 5,000 college students that met Jesus during college. And they wanted to know what the sequence of events was that was common to all 5,000 of them. And here's what they say. Step one in meeting Jesus was learning to trust a Christian. Because remember, 60% of the world has never been in church. And of the guys that I talk to like that, the most common comment I hear is, hey, I had friends that used to go to church and they got hurt and dropped out. Why would I want to go through that? I can believe in God on my own. That's what they say. And there's some truth to what they say, but it's an awful lot of goofiness too. You know, I don't have time to unpack all that. The relationships are most effectively built not on getting them into this room. That happens. But it starts with that relationship just being your friend. My friend Jay that I talked about from the 5 generations. Jay and I spent a lot of time together. In fact, when we moved back here, when his wife passed, I had to fly back there to do his wife's burial at sea. A wonderful, wonderful service, sprinkling ashes at sea. Because he said, I want you to come and do that voodoo you do. That's what he calls what we do here as voodoo. He was a mess. But you see, we had a relationship that I could talk to him and somewhat bridge the gap. The next thing is they become curious. And he did. He said, how come you're not like all those other Bible thumpers I know? And I said, because I don't thump my Bible. No, I said, seriously, because it's about a relationship with Jesus. It's not about making you conform to my ideas. And we talked about that. That's as far as he ever got because he wasn't willing to do the next step, and that's seek after God. He drew the line and he made it very clear to me, that's the line and you don't cross over it or you can leave. But people that the Spirit's working on, they begin to seek after God. And guess what? When you seek after God, what happens every time? You meet God and you enter the kingdom of heaven. We call this simply building bridges from our lives to the net, to theirs. So to seek after the 6 and 10 in your community, whatever your community is, not necessarily Baldwin City, but your community, the people you hang around with. I can give you a couple pointers and then I'll be done. Number 1, take the initiative to get acquainted and be much quicker to listen to their story than to tell yours. Frankly, they don't want to hear your story. They want to tell their story. As a pastor, I found out right off the bat, I'd go visit my seniors. And I was a 39-year-old kid, thought I had the world by the tail, and I'd go in talk to some 70-year-old. I'm 70. That's not that old. Anyway, some 70-year-old little old lady, and I kind of thought, well, pat her on her wrinkled little hand, aren't you special? First off, I got a real education on who the special one was, and why. But all I had to do was ask about one of the pictures on the wall, and they would tell me the story. Whether it was a picture they painted or their grandchild painted or whatever, we all love to talk about ourselves. So first off, get involved in them. Be much quicker to listen to them. And the worst thing you can do is, I just had a head transplant. They're saying, I just had a head transplant and now I've got blue eyes instead of brown. It's terrible. And then you say, yeah, well, I got a sliver in my eye and I had to go to the doctor and owie, it hurt. You see, they don't want to hear that. Their thing's a big deal. You're not relating to them when you relate your version of the same story. Just leave your story alone and listen to theirs. And simply you can say, yeah, you know what, I've had headaches. I can't imagine what you went through. Just that simple. Number 2, talk cars. That's the best subject, right, Pastor? Fishing poles, boring. Or sewing or quilting or whatever. I've just alienated half of you when I said fishing is boring, but I'm sorry. I must speak the truth. Whatever it is you have in common, talk about that. I keep reading car magazines that I don't care anymore about, but I keep reading them because it keeps my knowledge fresh, so I've got more to talk to the guys about, even though I'm way past those magazines as far as interest is concerned. Put up with their ungodly language. Now, there's a lot of ungodly language in the church, but that's a whole other message that ought not to have had to be spoken. But you got to be willing to put up with their attitudes, their language. You got to go to uncomfortable places. I'll never forget the first time I went into a bar where car guys had invited me for lunch. I prayed all the way going in, oh, please, Jesus, don't have the rapture now. Please wait the rapture till I get out of this place. I don't want you to rapture. And I'm stuck in that bar because then I'll go to hell, and I don't want to go to hell. Oh, Jesus, please. You can tell how I grew up. I went in there and I found out one amazing thought. Bar food is all greasy and nasty. But because I did that, I was able to bridge some gaps and go across. Now, if you've got a problem with alcohol, stay away. I think alcohol's horrible. I don't even like NyQuil. I'm just saying, but alcohol's keep your opinions about their lifestyles and habits in your prayer time as not as an opportunity for correction while you're building bridges. When they're a brother and sister in Christ, then you take the role of a big brother or sister and you teach them these things. But you don't go in and just on day one and say, that's my friend Jay. He said, the Bible thumpers, he called us. He said, they were always telling me I had bad language and that I shouldn't do this or that. What do they know? See, they built walls, not bridges. Did I like his language? No. Sometimes I looked for the biggest Q-tip I could find to clean out my ears when I came home, because I hate that language. But you see, that's where they are, and I need to be willing to be where they are. Attend their weddings and funerals. The last car guy funeral I had attended, that was actually a car person, was a lady last summer. And she is retired military, and the Air Force chaplain, how he got the name chaplain, I'll never know, and I wanted to take the cross right off of his lapel because he didn't mention Jesus once in that funeral. It was the most empty, dead, spiritually heavy place I've ever been in. But you know what? Because I was there, and one of the few members of that car club that were actually there wearing our goofy little car club t-shirts, so everybody knew we were there. Because I was there, I had great opportunities to talk to her husband. And we constantly are talking and building that bridge. Because I went, and because my heart was so grieved and my mind was so angry at that chaplain missing a wonderful opportunity. Didn't even mention Jesus in it. I've done a lot of funerals for people that don't know Jesus. That doesn't mean I didn't say, and if they could come back today, here's what they'd tell you. Learned that from an older minister, and it worked really well. Don't be in a hurry Oh, live a life in love with Jesus in front of them, but let his love for them flow through you. You can't love them on your own. If you scrunch up your eyes and say, I'm going to love them today, it's not going to work, and they're going to know you're just being phony. But if you take them to prayer, and as you pray over them, that's, to me anyway, that's the most important of my prayer for them. Part of my prayer for them is letting the Spirit then begin to soak into my spirit as he speaks to what he's feeling toward them. Then that comes out in you. That's what the Holy Spirit's about. Oh, we're Pentecostals. We love shouting and carrying on in service. There's nothing wrong with that. But Pentecost, the Spirit was given so we can be effective witnesses, and that's one of the key ways to be effective, is to feel the heart of God for that person and let that Spirit flowing from you to them. That's one of the most important parts. Don't be in a hurry to notch your Bible. Now, the younger ones here don't even know what I'm talking about, but back in the cowboy and Indian days of early television, how's that? The gunslinger always would notch his gun after he shot somebody, and so we kind of do that. We kind of figuratively notch our Bibles every time somebody gets saved. Well, there you go. I led somebody to Jesus. Look at that. We go to church on Sunday. Well, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I've got a new knot. Don't do that. Don't be in a hurry. I've got friends. Becky and I have some good friends, 2 women. They're not lesbian, but they do live together. That I have to say that because everybody assumes in this day and age they're not. We've known them since 2008, so however long that's 15 years. Do they know Jesus yet? No, but do we still keep the bridge open even though they're in California and we're here? Yes. We still keep communication, we still keep talking to them. You can't be in a hurry. And for those 2, makes me think, you can't not, even if they don't ever come to the family of God, which breaks your heart. I'm telling you, you invest yourself in them and they don't come, it will break your heart. But that should never cause you to not reach them. And if they choose not to, hey, a lot of people turn their back on Jesus too. So you're in a pretty important club. But that didn't stop him from trying. That shouldn't stop us from trying as well. We really do treasure this opportunity that we've had to share, Pastor. Thank you for that, for the opportunity. And I would love it if you would take prayer cards and pray for us, because we're a grandma and grandpa, mom and a dad. We love, we have needs and just like anybody else, we would love for you to pray. But as you pray, if you'll think about the fact that there are 180,000 unchurched car guys in Kansas. And these 2 people can't reach them all. We need a whole bunch of people out there reaching them. And remember, there's 2,900 people right here in Baldwin City that need you to reach them as well. That's what God wants to say to you today, is take this opportunity to think about your connection with them, even if it's something as simple as you just live next door to each other. And start building relationship bridges that Jesus can cross over from your heart to theirs. Thank you, Pastor.
All right, thank you. It'll be all right to open up for any questions anybody might have.
Oh, sure.
Anybody have any questions for Steve? Pretty simple, right?